Hi there, I hope you liked the video about wind to heat conversion. I'm going to make one where I have a turbine that I put on the beach and I'm going to store some heat, generate some heat in a thermos flask on the beach and take it home. But that will take some time to get ready. I want to talk about cash for a moment. Apple had a lot of cash, had a war chest of cash, and I'm reading left and right now what's happening to it now that Steve Jobs has died. Here it says flush with cash, Apple plans buyback and dividend. So, and another place I wrote or I read that cash, that Apple cash is going to be a benefit to the sciences and all that stuff. Simply said, what I expected would happen is happening, and that is that that big cash reserve is going to be spent. And that's the end of Apple. It's basically Apple is gone now, because or it is going. Basically, it might not be gone yet, but if you see these trends, if you see people look upon a cash reserve as a let's say something to feast on, then you know that it's going that's over for Apple. And why is it over for Apple? Well, because there is a reason why a company has an individual identity and can move about in the world and do the things that Apple did. And that is exactly and only because they had cash reserves. Because so the unique identity of Apple was, of course, partly related to Steve Jobs and the Aura and all this stuff, but primarily related to the fact that it could move about and do things just like a bank without needing a bank. It was basically a force of itself. How does it work? Well, say Apple wants to invest in new technology, a new revolutionary thing, then it could use its own cash. It would not have to consult anybody that had to understand the technology, blah blah, that type of bullshit. If Apple didn't like the other companies that were a threat or liked the technology and wanted to adopt it, then it could simply buy those companies. It would not have to consult anybody. It was simply autonomous. And that is something that banks completely hate, and that banks are not compatible with as well. I made a video earlier about free money, which basically cash is free money. If you have paper money or basically the primary source of free money is bankruptcies. So you would say that in a bankruptcy, the asset goes over to the bank, and you receive, or let's say the money that has not been repaid to the bank goes into society, where it is available to facilitate trades and exchanges in the economy, out of the control of banks, because banks are not lending that money out to anybody, and nobody's paying interest, so it's not flowing back to the banks based on normal interest rates. That's a disaster for banks, because what do you need banks for? Well, to get liquidity. If everybody had a huge cash reserves and would basically be hoarding it and spending it only where they saw it was valuable and useful, then everybody would be a banker. And that's not what banks want. Banks want nobody to be a banker, preferably, and only themselves to be able to give out the money. And then and that's why they have the interest rates at a rate that they also scoop up whatever free money is available in society. And whenever somebody has a lot of money, they knock his door and say, well, you have to invest, which is give it to us, give that money to us. And if you're Apple, then Apple has to invest now. So Apple has weak leaders now, and they're all going to lose that cash to the banks. And if you don't have, let's say, what happens if you don't have cash as a company? Then let's say Apple wants to invest in a new type of video screen, a 3D video screen or something else, and then it has to go to the bank and ask for a loan, and the bank will make a consideration. And you might say, well, it might think about the risk and stuff like that. Well, all that crap. You might not want that as Apple, so there might be that. But what it's mainly about is that the bank has lots of loans outstanding with different companies, with interest rates on them and revenues flowing from them, and is what you are going to try to do with the money of that bank going to influence those other revenues? It's not only about whether your idea is profitable or not. It's about is it a threat to the others, because that's the cash flow for the bank and for the banks, plural. And you know, in the same way, if and Apple had a hugely advantageous position because it was basically able to get patents where other people could not get patents, and it could do all kinds of stuff. Now that will all change. So basically, Apple will be a good company to park a patent or to grant a patent to basically monetize an idea. So you have an idea, banks say, well, that's a brilliant idea, but we have to monetize it. So you have to own it, otherwise you cannot sell it. So you have to get a patent. Who are we going to give the patent to? Well, we can give it to Apple because Apple has this status, this brand status, and it will be able to introduce it really fast. Because people will be able to go crazy about it, because they are already a little bit crazy if they are intensely pro-Apple. So that might be the reasoning. But it might also be, let's say, if somebody else comes along, then the banks will say, well, no, you're not going to do it, somebody else is going to do it. So either we don't give you the patent, or we don't give you the money to do it. We simply want something else. So, but that means that in the process that we see now, where cash is being dissipated, basically Apple will be not able to control its own development, or much less, and of course it will be probably not, because once this money is gone. You know, the forces are awakened in society. Listen, hey, there's an enormous cash cow, and we can go there and drive them crazy. There's no leader that is strict on it, because there's basically no leadership anymore. And well, once that money is gone, the autonomy of Apple is gone, and with the autonomy of Apple, the ability to differentiate significantly on its own accord will be gone, and that means the end of Apple. As a brand, it's no longer important. It will be Samsung, whatever other technology brands. Really doesn't matter. Because and let's say banks hunt for cash. Holland has quite a lot cash, 7% I read in another article. Sweden is now moving towards a cashless society, and that's presented as something that is positive. But of course, why would it be positive that there is only one means of exchange, your currency, and that everything you do has to be in that currency, that every transaction has to be transacted in that currency? It's about control. It's about complete and total and utter control of society and what happens in it. And the only reason why you want that control, and that's to go back to my very frequent topic, is because you are the carbon credit system, and you want to control whatever activity goes on, whatever development goes on. Nothing can be happening if it's a threat to your supply chain model, where you are the ones that dish out the money and loan out the money, and you do that exactly to match the amount of carbon that's available on the market at the current price, so that the price is not influenced and there's no inflation, because that would touch or ruin your revenue for your interest payments, and it would jeopardize whatever companies you are already owning. A cashless society fundamentally means that banks own everything. You no longer own anything. And so it's the opposite that needs to be tried for. It should be a whole, let's say, a complete cash society, or so that you can keep your own cash. That's like nobody. Well, everybody has a bank account. That's true. So, but the bank account is owned by the bank and is influenced by the bank. But it would be, I made this system, this tube coin system, which would mean that you have your own bank at all times. But it's not really and basically you have a bank account that is distributed because it is a barter bank account, which means that it contains items that can be bartered, and the banks are, in the TubeCoin model, are actually stores around the corner where you can have a okay, so I wanted a bottle of wine, I gave a book, I bartered it online. The bottle of wine is in the supermarket and it never left the supermarket. The previous owner had it in the supermarket. Now I have it in the supermarket. If I want to have it, I go to the supermarket and I get it. If I want to barter it, then I barter it online until somebody else that wants to have it has it. And everybody that goes to the supermarket in that barter system has to have a certificate of ownership of whatever they're going to get at the supermarket before they go there. Because there's no money. There's no money in that system. But so that they go there and they check out basically bottles of wine and cheese and milk and all the stuff that they need. Not with money, but with certificates of ownership of the bottles of wine. And who originates the certificate of ownership of bottles of wine? That is the maker of the damn wine. The maker of the damn cheese has an account in the same system. And at a certain time he says, well, I have 500, gonna put 500 cheese in the supermarket. Here, it's online, you can barter for it. And he barters it away for whatever he wants, that cheesemaker, and whatever he needs. That means that, okay, so I might need some fuel, I might need some this, and I might need some that. And if it, let's say, so that's how a barter moneyless system works. And everybody in that system is a bank, because he can finance, he can produce something and give it away, trade it away. And you can of course trade hours work, because you can create them, you can trade them away, and then nobody needs to let's say needs to borrow anything, but you can promise. See, because of course that's complete opposite. I mean, you go to a bank, you borrow 100,000 euros. You think, okay, now I have 100,000 euros, but that's not true, of course, because if the economy would not exist to make whatever you are going to buy with that 100,000 euros, those 100,000 euros are worth shit. So it's only because it's buffered by an existing economy with a surplus of goods and services that you can spend that 100,000 euros. It's worthless. It's a promise. It's a promise by the bank, which they can very easily make, that you can go out and purchase stuff. But the banks don't really monitor the validity of that promise, so they'll borrow your money. And if they don't control the energy flow in society, so they don't control how well people can produce, or how easy it is, or they don't foster technological innovation, which they don't, because they don't like that, because they don't like to distort their income patterns, then you might go in society with 100,000 euros and you find, hey shit, oil price has risen. It's not worth what I expected. I cannot buy what I thought I was borrowing. But that's how banks operate. Anyway. I'm going to update that TubeCoin system. I've been talking about it for years. I made it in 2009, 10, 11, 12. It's 3 years, more than 3 years ago, and it's still not really used because it's almost. It works, but it's not really pretty, and that's a pity. So this is a video about cash. I think that's and that it's important. So, and also, like relating to a video that I made before, just to finish this video, is that if you want to free cash, you make people go bankrupt voluntarily. Then you basically say, well, I borrowed this money, or somebody borrowed this money, and they are not going to pay it back. We want this money in our economy. That's of course horrible, and the common meme about bankruptcy is, of course, that you should never go bankrupt. Of course, you should never go bankrupt. Why? Well, exactly for that reason, because that would break the power of the banks, of the people that basically want to determine the liquidity in society, that want to control it because they control the energy flow, etc. Blah blah blah. Same story. Renewable energies, that system completely unnecessary. So a cashless society in Sweden is only, let's say, a further pushing further the effects of a carbon credit system. And it won't last. That's quite clear, because carbon won't last. Thanks for listening. I hope this is not too long, and I'll be reporting on my other inventions, because I'm working on something, a lot of different projects, but I only show one at a time. Thanks.